I've always believed that the world is a lot stranger than we like to admit. We go about our days, convinced that everything can be explained, that every shadow has a source, every sound a logical reason. But sometimes, something happens that shatters that illusion. Sometimes you come face to face with the unknown, and no matter how hard you try, you can't make sense of it. These are the stories that stay with you, the ones you replay in your mind late at night, searching for answers that never come. Tonight, I want to share 4 real-life encounters with the unknown. Stories that no one, not even the people who lived them, can explain. The first story comes from a small town in Vermont, a place where everyone knows everyone, and secrets are hard to keep. But what happened to me that winter night is something I've never told anyone, not even my closest friends. I was 17, just old enough to feel invincible, but still young enough to be scared of the dark. It was late December, and the snow had been falling for hours, blanketing the world in silence. My parents were out of town for the weekend, and I was home alone, enjoying the rare freedom. I'd spent most of the evening watching movies and texting friends, the kind of night that feels endless when you're a teenager. Around midnight, I decided to take the trash out. The wind had died down, and the snow was still falling soft and steady. I pulled on my boots and coat, grabbed the bag, and stepped outside. The cold hit me like a slap, but the air was so still, so peaceful that I didn't mind. Our house sat at the edge of a forest, and the backyard sloped down into the trees. I'd always loved that view, the way the moonlight turned the snow into a silver sea. As I walked to the trash cans, I noticed something strange, a set of footprints leading from the woods to the back porch. They were fresh, perfectly outlined in the snow, and they didn't belong to any animal I knew. They were human, but not quite. The stride was too long, the shape of the foot too narrow, almost delicate. I stopped, heart pounding, and looked around. The world was silent, the only sound my own breathing. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, maybe a neighbor cutting through the yard, but no one ever did that. Not in the middle of the night, not in this weather. I followed the prints with my eyes, watching as they stopped at the porch, then turned and disappeared back into the woods. There were no other marks, no sign of anyone slipping or stumbling, just a perfect line in and out. I stood there for a long time, the cold seeping into my bones until I finally forced myself to move. I threw the trash in the can and hurried back inside, locking the door behind me. I spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, listening for sounds that never came. The next morning, I went outside to check. The footprints were still there, but now they were joined by another set, my own, from the night before. I followed them to the edge of the woods, half expecting to find some clue, some explanation. But the prints just stopped, as if whoever or whatever had made them had vanished into thin air. I never saw anything like it again. But sometimes, when the snow falls just right, I remember that night, and I wonder what was out there, watching me from the trees. The second story comes from a friend of mine, someone I trust completely. He's not the type to make things up, and he's never been interested in the supernatural. But what happened to him one summer night changed the way he looked at the world forever. He was driving home from work, a late shift at the hospital. The kind of night where the roads are empty and the world feels like it belongs to you. It was just after 2 a.m., and he was taking the back roads, winding through the hills and fields that surrounded our town. He told me that, as he rounded a bend, his headlights caught something on the side of the road, a figure standing perfectly still. At first he thought it was a deer, but as he got closer he realized it was a person. A woman dressed in a long white dress, her hair hanging loose around her shoulders. She didn't move, didn't even seem to notice the car. My friend slowed down, rolling down his window to ask if she needed help. But as he got closer, he saw her face, and something about it made his blood run cold. She was smiling, but her eyes were empty, almost glassy, like she was looking right through him. He stopped the car, engine idling, and called out to her. She didn't respond, just kept staring. He said he felt this overwhelming sense of dread, like he was seeing something he wasn't supposed to. He put the car in reverse, backing away slowly, never taking his eyes off her. As he turned the car around, he glanced in the rearview mirror, and she was gone. Just like that. No sound, no movement, nothing. He drove home as fast as he could, heart pounding, and didn't sleep for days. He never saw her again. But sometimes when he's driving those roads late at night, he catches himself glancing at the side of the road, half expecting to see her standing there, waiting. These stories aren't the kind you tell at parties or share around a campfire. They're the kind that make you question everything you think you know about the world. The kind that remind you that sometimes the unknown is closer than you think. The third story is one I've never been able to shake, no matter how many times I try to rationalize it. It happened to my cousin Mark when he was in college. Mark was always the skeptic in the family, the one who rolled his eyes at ghost stories and insisted that everything had a logical explanation. He was studying engineering at a university in the Midwest, living in a cramped off-campus apartment with 2 roommates. The building was old, the kind of place where the pipes rattled and the walls were thin enough to hear your neighbors sneeze. But it was cheap and it was close to campus, so they made it work. One night, Mark was up late working on a project. His roommates were both out, and the apartment was unusually quiet. He had his headphones on, music playing low when he heard a knock at the door. At first, he thought he'd imagined it, but then it came again. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. He paused his music and listened. Nothing. He got up, walked to the door, and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. He shrugged it off, figuring it was just the building settling or maybe someone at the wrong door. He went back to his desk, put his headphones on, and tried to focus. A few minutes later, the knocks came again. This time they were louder, more insistent. Mark pulled off his headphones, annoyed, and went to the door. Again, no one was there. He opened the door, looked up and down the hallway, but it was empty. He closed the door, locked it, and went back to his room, feeling a little unsettled. He tried to get back to work, but the feeling of being watched wouldn't go away. He kept glancing over his shoulder, half expecting to see someone standing in the doorway. Then, just as he was starting to relax, his phone buzzed. It was a text from his roommate, Jake. "Hey, did you just knock on my door?" Mark frowned, confused. He texted back, "No, I'm in my room." "Are you home?" Jake replied almost immediately, "No, I'm at the library. But someone just knocked on my door 3 times. I thought it was you messing with me." Mark's stomach dropped. He texted their third roommate, Sam, who replied that he was still at work. Mark tried to laugh it off, telling himself it was just a coincidence, maybe someone playing a prank. But deep down he knew something was off. He decided to call it a night and went to brush his teeth. As he stood in the bathroom, he heard the knocks again. 3 slow, deliberate raps, this time coming from the bathroom door. Mark froze, toothbrush in hand, heart pounding. He stared at the door, waiting for it to happen again. Nothing. He opened the door, looked around, but the apartment was empty. He checked every room, every closet, even under the beds, but there was no one there. He tried to sleep, but every time he closed his eyes, he heard those knocks echoing in his mind. The next morning, he told his roommates what had happened. They all laughed it off, but Mark could tell they were uneasy. Over the next few weeks, the knocking continued. Sometimes it was at the front door, sometimes at the bedroom doors, sometimes even at the windows. It always came in 3s, always when they were alone. They tried everything, changing the locks, putting up cameras, even blessing the apartment with sage. Nothing worked. Eventually, the lease ended and they all moved out. Mark says he's never experienced anything like it since, but sometimes, late at night, he still hears those 3 knocks in his dreams. The fourth and final story is perhaps the strangest of all. It happened to a woman named Linda, a friend of my mother's who lived in a quiet suburb outside of Seattle. Linda was a practical person, a retired school teacher who spent her days gardening and volunteering at the local library. She wasn't the type to believe in ghosts or aliens or anything out of the ordinary. But what happened to her one spring afternoon defied all explanation. Linda was out in her backyard tending to her roses when she noticed something strange in the sky. At first, she thought it was a plane, but as it got closer, she realized it was moving too fast, too erratically. It darted back and forth, zigzagging across the sky in a way that no aircraft could. She watched, transfixed, as it hovered above her yard, a bright, silvery object that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. Suddenly, it shot straight up into the clouds and disappeared. Linda stood there for a moment, trying to process what she'd seen. She went inside, made herself a cup of tea, and tried to forget about it. But that night, she woke up to a strange humming sound. like a swarm of bees just outside her window. She got up, looked outside, and saw the same silvery object hovering above her backyard, bathing the garden in an eerie bluish light. She watched, frozen, as the object slowly descended, stopping just above the ground. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it shot back up into the sky and vanished. Linda never saw the object again, but for weeks afterward, her garden flourished like never before. Flowers bloomed out of season. Vegetables grew twice as large as normal, and even the neighbors commented on how vibrant everything looked. Linda never told anyone about what she'd seen, afraid they'd think she was crazy. But sometimes when she's out in her garden, she looks up at the sky and wonders if whatever visited her that night will ever come back. These 4 stories are just a glimpse into the unknown, a reminder that sometimes the world is stranger than we can imagine. We like to think we have all the answers, that science and reason can explain everything. But every now and then, something happens that defies explanation. Something that makes us question everything we think we know. Maybe that's what makes these stories so powerful. Not the fear, but the mystery. The sense that there's still so much out there waiting to be discovered. Some stories fade with time, their edges blurring until you're not sure if they ever really happened. But the stories I've just told you, the footprints in the snow, the woman on the roadside, the relentless knocking, the impossible light in the garden, these don't fade. They linger, growing sharper the more you try to forget them. Maybe that's because they don't fit neatly into the boxes we use to organize our lives. They don't have tidy endings or logical explanations. They just exist, stubborn and unsettling, daring us to look closer. I've spent years thinking about these encounters, trying to make sense of them. I've read books, listened to podcasts, even talked to experts, psychologists, scientists, paranormal investigators. Everyone has a theory, but no one has an answer. Some say it's all in our heads, tricks of the mind brought on by stress or fatigue. Others believe there are things out there we simply can't understand, forces that slip through the cracks of our reality. I don't know which is scarier, the idea that our minds can betray us so completely, or that the world is full of things we can't see or control. Take Mark's story, for example. The 3 knocks, always in threes, always when he was alone. Some people say that's a classic sign of a haunting, a spirit trying to make contact. Others say it's just coincidence, the kind of thing that happens in old buildings. But Mark isn't the type to jump at shadows. He's logical, methodical, the kind of person who double-checks the locks before he goes to bed. For him to be shaken, for him to admit he was scared, that means something. It means that whatever happened in that apartment was real, at least to him. And what about Linda's garden? I've seen it myself. The way her roses bloom in colors you don't see anywhere else. The way her tomatoes grow as big as grapefruits. She laughs it off, says she just has a green thumb, but I can see the doubt in her eyes. She knows what she saw even if she can't explain it. Maybe it was just a trick of the light, a weather balloon, some rare atmospheric phenomenon. Or maybe it was something else, something that left a mark not just on her memory, but on the world around her. It's easy to dismiss these stories, to say they're just coincidences or misunderstandings. But if you talk to enough people, you start to notice patterns. The same details crop up again and again. Strange lights, unexplained sounds, the feeling of being watched. It doesn't matter where you live or how old you are. The unknown finds a way to touch us all. Sometimes it's a fleeting moment, a chill down your spine that you shake off and forget. Other times it's a story you carry with you for the rest of your life. I remember the first time I heard a story like this. I was a kid, sitting around a campfire with my cousins, listening to my uncle tell a story about a man who disappeared in the woods. He said the man was an experienced hiker, someone who knew the trails better than anyone. One day he went out for a walk and never came back. They searched for weeks, combing every inch of the forest, but there was no trace. No footprints, no clothing, nothing. It was as if he'd been swallowed by the earth. My uncle said the woods were full of secrets, that sometimes the land just takes what it wants. I didn't sleep that night, and for years afterward, I was afraid to go into the woods alone. As I got older, I started to think those stories were just meant to scare us, to keep us from wandering too far. But now, after hearing so many stories from so many different people, I'm not so sure. Maybe there really are places where the rules don't apply. where the unknown is closer than we think. Maybe the world is full of doors we're not meant to open, paths we're not meant to follow. I've talked to people who've seen things they can't explain, lights in the sky, figures in the dark, voices calling their names when no one is there. Some of them are embarrassed, afraid people will think they're crazy. Others are angry, desperate for someone to believe them. But all of them share the same look in their eyes, a mix of fear and wonder, the sense that they've glimpsed something extraordinary. It's that feeling, I think, that keeps us coming back to these stories. The sense that the world is bigger and stranger than we can imagine. The hope that maybe, just maybe, there's more out there waiting to be discovered. We crave answers, but sometimes the questions are more important. They remind us that we don't know everything, that there's still magic in the world, even if it's hidden in the shadows. So the next time you hear a story that makes your skin crawl, don't be so quick to dismiss it. Listen closely, ask questions, let yourself wonder, even if just for a moment, what else might be out there. Because sometimes the unknown isn't something to be feared. Sometimes it's a reminder that we're all part of a story that's still being written. There's a moment, right before you fall asleep, when the world feels thin. The room is quiet, the lights are off, and your mind drifts between dreams and reality. That's when the stories come back. The footprints in the snow, the woman on the roadside, the knocks in the night, the impossible light in Linda's garden. They replay in your mind, each detail sharper than before. You tell yourself it's just your imagination, that there's nothing lurking in the dark. But deep down, you know better. You know that the unknown is always waiting, just out of sight, just beyond the reach of reason. I think that's why these stories matter. Not because they scare us, but because they remind us that we're not alone. That no matter how much we try to explain the world, there will always be mysteries we can't solve. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we need the unknown, the unexplainable, to keep us humble. To remind us that we're not as in control as we think. Sometimes, I wonder what would happen if we stopped trying to explain everything, if we just accepted that some things are beyond our understanding. Would we be less afraid or more? Would we find comfort in the mystery, or would it drive us mad? I don't know. But I do know that the people who've experienced the unknown never forget it. It changes them in ways big and small. It makes them question, makes them curious, makes them see the world with new eyes. I remember talking to Linda a few months after her encounter. She was different, quieter, more thoughtful. She told me she'd started keeping a journal, writing down everything she saw and heard, just in case it happened again. She said she didn't expect anyone to believe her, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that she knew what she'd seen, and that was enough. Think about that a lot. The courage it takes to hold on to your own truth even when the world tells you you're wrong. Mark, too, changed after his experience. He became more open, more willing to listen to other people's stories. He said he realized that not everything could be measured or explained, that sometimes you just have to accept what happens and move on. He still doesn't believe in ghosts, not really, but he doesn't laugh at the idea anymore. He knows that the world is full of things we can't see, can't touch, can't understand, and that's okay. As for me, I've learned to live with the questions. I still look for answers, still try to make sense of the things I've seen and heard. But I'm not afraid of the unknown anymore. If anything, I'm grateful for it. It keeps life interesting. It keeps me searching, keeps me wondering, and maybe one day I'll find the answers I'm looking for. Or maybe I won't. Maybe the mystery is the point. If you've ever had an experience you can't explain, you're not alone. There are more of us out there than you think. People who've seen things, heard things, felt things that don't fit into the neat little boxes we use to organize our lives. We don't always talk about it, but we remember. We carry those stories with us, tucked away in the corners of our minds, waiting for the right moment to share them. So tonight, as you turn off the lights and settle into bed, listen to the silence. Pay attention to the shadows. And if you hear a sound you can't explain, or see something out of the corner of your eye, don't be afraid. You're just catching a glimpse of the unknown, a reminder that the world is bigger and stranger than you ever imagined. Maybe tomorrow, you'll wake up and forget all about it. Maybe you'll laugh it off, tell yourself it was just a dream. But maybe, just maybe, you'll remember. You'll remember the feeling of not knowing, the thrill of the mystery, the sense that anything is possible. And you'll carry that with you, out into the world, ready for whatever comes next. Because in the end, that's what these stories are really about. Not fear, not danger, but possibility. The possibility that there's more to this world than we can see. The possibility that the unknown is not something to be solved, but something to be experienced. Something to be embraced. So keep your eyes open. Keep your mind open. And the next time you find yourself face to face with the unknown, don't turn away. Step closer. Ask questions. Let yourself wonder. Because sometimes the best stories are the ones that don't have an ending. The ones that leave you searching, long after the lights have gone out.